Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Monday. Hope everyone is feeling great today. And I just want to talk to you guys a little tiny bit about having goals in life. It is extremely important to have goals. It's very important to have targets, because when you're just living without goals, it becomes pointless in a way. You feel like you're just doing the same thing every day, and what's the point? But when you have a target or targets, then it's more meaningful. It makes sense because you know that you're trying to get somewhere. You're not just getting up and going to work and then you come home and you do it again. No, you're actually trying to get somewhere. There is another level that you're trying to climb to. You're trying to get to that goal. You're trying to reach that goal. You're trying to make it happen. And I apply that to fitness, and it really has been great because before I would just work out and that was it. I want to work out because I want to look better, I want to feel better. But it's really cool when you actually have targets, because you become intentional with what you're doing. And I have learned that with everything, you just have to be intentional. So I recommend that if you don't have any goals, if you don't have any targets, start applying goals to your life, because you're gonna see the difference. Even when you talk to somebody, you feel good because now you know where you're going. When somebody asks you how you're doing, you're not just gonna have a common answer like anybody else. Oh, I'm just trying to get by. I'm just doing my thing. But it's nice, and I understand that sometimes, you don't want to share what you're doing. You want to avoid sometimes the negativity, maybe a negative response from somebody. I get that. But it's just good to have goals in life. It's good because it makes sense. It actually becomes exciting. It can be fun because you know that you're trying to get somewhere. And again, this really has helped me with fitness, and I would encourage you to do the same. Have goals. I had set a goal to reach a certain weight, and it happened. And it's crazy because I set the goal and I wrote it down. And I started just to really be intentional with my nutrition, really just focusing, avoiding the foods that I know I need to avoid, not eating late at night, and just being strict. And little by little, I started to climb up that ladder, and I started to get closer, until one day I weighed myself and I was surprised, and I felt very happy, very proud, and thankful. So that's why I encourage you, have goals, have a game plan. Don't just show up to the gym without knowing what to do. Whether you work out at home or in a public gym, have a game plan. I usually, I write down my workouts, whatever I'm gonna do the following day, and I actually get excited about it. And perhaps it might not be as exciting to you as it may be for someone else, but write it down, because that way you have structure and you know what you're going, you know where you're going, you know what you're doing. So I encourage you today, with fitness and also with other areas in your life, have goals, have targets, know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, If you feel extremely lost, here's another piece of advice. Pray. Pray, and you'll see how God is going to guide you. If you choose to do so, if you feel lost in life, and it's okay. Doesn't matter how young or old you are. It happens to all of us. I have had moments where I have felt lost. And what did I do? I just prayed. I prayed and I started to find guidance, that divine guidance. And I started to actually walk toward goals. I started to have targets. And I'm like, wow, this really works, It makes sense, You want your life to make sense. You want to know where you're going. And you're not going to know everything. But as I mentioned before, having goals, having targets is very important because it will make life exciting and you will be intentional with everything that you do. So I strongly encourage you today to please do so. If you haven't done so, start from tonight. Write it down. When you write down your goals, it's just something amazing about that when you write it down, you really start to hold yourself accountable because you already wrote that down. So every time you look at that piece of paper, whether it's a notebook, wherever you wrote it on, it's a reminder that you wrote that down and now you got to go after it. You got to go and make it happen. So my people, as I've said before, I'll say it again, please take care of yourselves. Have some self-love. Be careful with what you put in your body. Watch out with what you eat. And make time to go to the gym. Make time to take care of your mental health, your physical. And I hope that you all have a beautiful and very, very blessed Monday. Take care, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.